that is very ill right now, and all your loved ones and the ones that have gone before you. Pray that we get out of this terrible virus that is going on around the country. Help us pull together and stay close to each other. Amen.
Amen.
Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Diana?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation
nation,
Under
under
God.
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
The Texas flag is Ceballos. Is she on?
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to
To
the
the
Texas,
Texas, one state, under God, one
and
indivisible.
indivisible.
Amen.
Thank you. We go to item number 4, public participation as per policy BED local. Is there none, sir?
None.
Okay, then we go to item number 5, governance. It's the budget workshop for 2020-2021.
Yes, sir. And trustees, all of you should have your packets that we sent out another packet today, just with some updated items. Does everyone have that available to yourself?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and Ms. Conway will help to lead the budget workshop. And I told her to make sure that she takes a good pace on it. Now, I know that we reviewed a couple of documents, I think it was a week before last, but she's going to go ahead and highlight some of that. One thing, trustees, although we're not going to vote on that you vote on it this evening, but we would like to get some direction from you is possible actions, or not an action, excuse me, option of option 1 or option 2 that would enable us to be able to offer our employees either a 1% or a 2% raise. But she'll go ahead and go through the items. Both of these would be have a balanced budget, although one would have some additional funding that we could work with on specific projects. So Nina, I'll go ahead and let you begin.
Okay, I'm going to start with draft 1 at the very top of the page.
One thing,
It
trustees,
says
although we're not
draft
going to vote.
1, option 1, 2%. Okay? And I'm going to follow down. We discussed this at our last meeting, but I'm going to follow down this column, which is the change. And I just want to remind you, board members, the first column is what y'all approved in August of 2019 for the current year. The middle column is what we're currently projecting for 1920. And then, of course, the third column is the difference between the two. So at the very top, we're anticipating, third column, $125,000 in additional property tax revenue. That's because our values went up about 3%. So that's the only change in local revenue. The next section is your state resources. So given our current ADA of 2390, we should generate a middle column, $19.5 million, which is an increase of $834,000 over last year's budget. However, if you'll remember, our current budget includes, we did a property value study, and we were able to recoup some state funding from 2015 and 2017 that we're receiving this year, totals about $440,000. And as I told you then, it was a one-time deal, not going to reoccur this year. So that's going to be a reduction in state funding. So the bottom line is our state funding will increase by about $400,000. The next section is our federal funds. The only increase in federal funds comes from SHARS money. And as I stated last time, we moved a lot of federal staff from her federal budget into local because they are SHARS reimbursable. Anyone that does anything with medical, nurses, OTPTs, all of those, we can get SHARS reimbursement, but only if they're paid locally. So when we made that switch, that generated an additional $200,000 for a total of an increase in revenue over last year of 1.3 million. In this next section, I'm going to have you circle like I did these two numbers.
Just whenever you're going over that, the paper always sees one corner of it. So you're going to have to really move it over a little bit. Now we can see it all. Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, so I've circled these two numbers because the detail to these two numbers on Schedule A of 1.2 million and your Schedule B of 120,000, the detail is all the next pages. Okay, so if you see those two numbers, I'll show you where they come from. So page 2, Schedule A is just personnel. Schedule B is everything else. So when we're looking at Schedule A, the top section.
Other side. The way you had it before. there you go.
Okay. Schedule A
No,
is a two.
Tina, the way you had
What?
it before, the other time when you flipped, your face was on the other side. There you go. Now we can see it. There you go.
Okay, sorry. It looks good in my picture. Okay, so this first section is our pay increase. Again, this is option 1, which is a 2% of midpoint increase with $250 December incentive. So that would calculate each teacher that's 187 days would get a $1,025 increase. All teachers would get the same amount. Consequently, the pay grades are also all going to get the same amount. So if I'm a clerical CP1, which is clerical and paraprofessional, everybody in pay grade 1, CP1, will get the same 2% of midpoint. And the same with the maintenance and transportation, all pay grades. So we have a salary schedule from last year, the 2019-20. We're not changing that salary schedule. That's now going to be a hiring schedule, and we'll go with a 2 or 3% raise from here on out. We may want to adjust it next year or the year after that, but we're anticipating keeping the same salary schedule as we did last year for hiring purposes. Any questions so far? Okay, so the next section is if it has a date on it, that means that we've hired or budgeted this year these new positions. So all these first ones have a 2019, 2020. That means we've amended the budget to include these people. So down here you have some new positions. Teacher GT doesn't have a date. That means that's going to be a new position for next year, followed by technology specialist. And I want to show you this third column. That's the actual local budget that y'all are responsible for. And you can see there's a zero amount on the technology specialist because they're going to come from other funds. We're hoping to pay this person out of instructional materials allotment. So it won't have any effect on the local funding. And then the last one is
technology specialist. I'm just curious, don't we have Richard that does that already?
No,
Yeah,
sir.
this is
Well, Richard works on all the infrastructure of the school district, anything that we need there. To have somebody that actually works with teachers on instructional that has a teaching background, that's what this particular person does. So everything we're doing with Google Classroom, this person is going to help us on the instructional side.
Gotcha. Okay.
okay. So the next section is your support staff. This year we hired 3 monitors. We budgeted a mechanic helper and an HVAC assistant. And next year we're hoping to add another security guard. So the total is 172,000 increase in support staff. Okay, all that being said, here's my number that I had you circle. So this $1.2 million, which is the local effect ties to that first page that I had you circle that number. Okay? So on page 1, this number, can you see it? Am I good? Ties to this number.
1,219,537.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so page 3 is, like I said, everything else. We start out with each campus. Early in the year, about February, we estimated what our enrollment would be. We all agreed on what that enrollment number is, and then we disseminated funding to each campus based on their enrollment number. They then took that pot of number, that high school is 379,815. They took that to their site-based team and decided how to best utilize those funds. So the first 4 sections are just campuses. Right in the middle of the page is special request. We are hoping to buy half of a trailer at $15,000. We need to start looking at band instrument replacements, so we've currently just budgeted $25,000, and then maintenance needs a cargo truck at $15,000.
And trustees, based on our last conversation, I know that you wanted me to review as far as for instruments, if there's a lease program, and Mr. Cabrera is looking into that for us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next section is other schools. That's JJAEP, Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program. Like I said last week, we buy seats in case we need that, those services. And then summer school is 80,000. Both of those numbers have not changed from the current year. So it's no additional funding needed. And then other responsibilities, starting with 701 superintendent. I also sent you, handed out this document. And it is the detail of every single one of those departments. So for instance, let's go with Nina Conway, 730 business office. It starts on page 1 at the very bottom. And it ends on page 2, and then it totals.
And trustees, just because it threw me off for a while, again, you're looking at, let's go to page 1. You see superintendent, 701 superintendent on page 1. You're not going down, you're actually going up. And it took me a while to get used to that. So just to make sure we're clear on that.
But all those highlighted numbers, that's your total, and they will tie to this document. So superintendent is 30,136. This document shows that it's 30,136. It also shows that's an increase of 8589. And it also says the why. Anyone that increased their budget had to justify why. This particular justification is because we paid it out of 945, that huge slush fund that we had at one time, district-wide, and we're trying to get everyone to budget their department accordingly. This happens to be TASB, what is Dr. Mo Casey, all those that the superintendent pays for. We were paying at a 945, but we want to show it as a superintendent cost. Any questions? And if y'all have any questions now or in the future about any of these, please feel free to call me, email me. You know, I'm ready and available to answer.
Nina, do we have a master key to tell us what each account number stands for?
Yes, ma'am. I sent a one-sheeter. Oh, I don't think you were at that last board meeting.
I was.
Yeah, I sent out one sheet that it had function, fund, and object. But I'll email you another one. I'm sorry. I handed out when I handed this big packet out. I'll get you one.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And we'll just get one to all the trustees on that too. So trustees, let me go back to what Nina just said. So again, for transparency purposes and actually have an itemized item, So like, again, under superintendent, where you see that 8,589, and where she said, you go up and it explains why to move money from 945 to 6495. Basically what that's doing is now you have an itemized amount, whereas before it all used to go just in one bucket. Okay, well now you have it itemized, so you'll always know exactly how much and for what reason it'll be there.
Okay, any questions so far? So if you follow page 4,
Without looking at the cheat notes, I'm just wondering, we have $140,000 under our budget. And I can't tell what those amounts are for.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
6121, that's going to be overtime. That's probably Irma for work.
No, I'm talking about our 702.
That is 702. Look right under superintendent.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's
looking.
right under where it says 701 superintendent, that's where the board starts.
Right, I
702.
know that. My question
Okay.
is, how come we have so much money in there? I can't tell what
A
that's
lot of
for.
it is legal. Y'all are responsible for
Okay.
legal. So
Okay.
6211 is legal. That's the,
Okay.
that's half of your budget.
For all
Okay.
15
Also-
attorneys it's for all 15 attorneys that we all have voted to get in.
That makes sense.
It does. Not to me, it doesn't. Maybe to you.
Well, it makes sense on why we have so much money. I don't, that's something else about the attorneys.
Well, your budget also pays election costs. We're fixing to have an election. That's probably going to be $5,000 to $8,000. Of course, your budget also pays for y'all's travel. Y'all travel in 6419, so that's your travel account. 6439 is election cost. So those are the three biggies: travel, election cost, and attorney fees.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? Okay, so page 4 totals it up and says we're increasing 120,570, and that's that second number on page 1 that I asked you to circle. So you have a detail of everything in this budget. A detailed printout, other than payroll, but I mean, you have a gross amount for payroll. Any questions so far?
Is that a one-sheeter? Is that on its own? A one-sheeter on its own? The one you're holding
This
up?
one, this is
it-
page 4. This is your page 4.
It kind of is, though. You
Okay.
can tell it's kind of a little subtitles, cheat sheets on the left side.
Right, it's a
Page 4.
continuation of page 3
Okay,
of
got
all
it.
the departments,
Thank you.
okay? Okay, so the next one, I'm only going to talk about 2 things. Option 2, there's only 2 changes from option 1 to option 2. So option 2 is a 1% increase as opposed to a 2%, and a $400 incentive pay instead of $250 in option 1. So to highlight those 2 numbers, again, I circled these 2 numbers to show you the detail. A 1% would give teachers a $512 raise across the board, instead of a 2% would have been $10,025. So that's the only change on this page. And here's your $1 million difference that was on page 1. Okay? The second change is because we have now increased our incentive pay, which is paid out of 945 district-wide. If you'll turn to page 9, my 945 district-wide money went up by $75,000. That's to pay an additional $150 to each employee that's here in December. It will cost us about $75,000. Again, that's the only 2 changes from option 1 to option 2. And I'd really like to get an idea of which way y'all would prefer to go so that we can start calculating salaries and get all this plugged in so that we can finalize the budget.
And again, trustees, it's not an item to necessarily vote on, but if we get a sense as far as a 2% raise for employees, and then again, their winter incentive would be at 250. Again, you do 2%, and that's something that does count towards your TRS. If we go to 1%, yes, they'll get a bigger incentive during the Christmas at 400, but again, that's less that goes to TRS because that incentive is always separate from TRS.
Nina, can we do 300 versus the 250 and the 2%?
That would cost, okay, I should be able to do this. 150, that's a third, so that would be $25,000.
And right now, Ms. Roldan, the way that it's set up, it's right at that one is balanced. So that means they would have to reduce certain areas, certain other areas to make that happen.
Just asking. Okay.
Okay, I will point that out again. In the middle of the page on both, in the gray area, that's whether you're balanced or not. This is option 1. You'll see right here in this gray area, there's a 0 amount here. That means your revenue and your expense are the same amount. Option 2 has a little more revenue than it does expense. So we've got a $98,000 difference, which we would be able to utilize for special projects, one-time projects like the M&O building or additional computers for students, one-time expenditures.
How much did you say? 98,000?
Yes, ma'am, and some change.
Okay.
And that would be at a 1% raise at midpoint.
At the 1% and 400?
Yes, ma'am. $98,470 difference. Again, that's on page 6 in the middle of the page. And from here on out, trustees, our plan is to again present draft 2 and not go into so much detail. We'll only identify, unless you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions, but we'll only identify the change between draft 1 and draft 2. So if we decided we needed 3 more teachers, we'll just show that we've added 3 teachers, and we'll only discuss the change between these 2 documents. Dr. Marino asked me earlier when we can get this finalized. I'm hoping to get all payroll in by July so that we could actually have a final budget early August. However, I really like a late August board meeting because that's my final time to amend the current 1920 budget.
And last year we passed a budget also in late August?
I believe it was the 28th.
Okay, because our fiscal year starts September 1st, our new fiscal year, correct?
Yes, sir. It's required to be completed by August 20th and approved before September 1st. But there's a lot of, I've got to put a lot of stuff in the paper and work with the tax office to get all those reports to the newspaper.
Where we
Any questions?
Where we're at with balancing? I guess we have to wait till end of July?
Balancing current budget?
Yes.
I would like to wait till July because I'm already looking at certain accounts. Like, I think we can identify some money in utilities. I believe it's because since our buildings have been closed down, it looks like there may be some saving opportunities in utilities. Also, I want to wait till July because the CFR coronavirus relief fund. That application is coming out in July. We've been told it may be mostly cities and not so much us, but until that application comes out, we don't know. I know how the money is dispersed. It's by number of free and reduced students, $250 each. So in our district, that would be $600,000. They only reimburse you at 75%. But again, until that application comes out, we don't know if we qualify or not.
Yeah, and trustees, right now, like what Nina is saying, that again, we're still waiting to hear from the state what direction we're going, if we're going to have any type of relief or not. They are letting us know to be conservative, because a lot of what's going to happen as far as funding or state funding comes back to ADA, you know, our attendance with kids in school. The program, and today I'm going to give you just a brief update on that. We need to ensure that our students are continuing to come to attend school, and the grading. And like I said, I'll give you a sample of what the plan is for next year. That's going to have a lot to do with our final budgets for next year. Now, one of the biggest priorities that we have for our students is acquiring more computers. Right now, in your packets, I did include, it's just a one-pager that looks like this. And it on the top, it says device count by campus. And you'll see some blue handwriting on it where I wrote Chromebooks.
Dr. Moreno, I saw it somewhere that TA was going to offer some laptops. Have you checked into that? Is that something that we can check into, or we know that it may be coming?
Last week in our meeting with the commissioner, they did mention that they have a program they're trying to work with, but they haven't given direction, they haven't given amount, they haven't given a timeline. So still a possibility. Now, most of the funds, which is about 1.4 million that we thought that might be coming towards us for some level of relief, actually at this point, the state is actually taking that back to make up the difference of what's happened in the spring. So right now, although they said they have a plan that they're working on, there's no guarantee that we're going to have anything. So really right now we have to plan for in preparation to meet the needs of our students. So if you look at that document right now, it's basically that we have now, you'll notice Lot Speech, Driscoll, San Pedro, everyone sees that, have now, because the principals used funding that they had to complete their school year, any funding they had left over, because we didn't have tutoring, of course, in the spring because of COVID, any additional title funds. What they ended up doing is purchasing more Chromebooks to be able to meet the needs of our program for next year. And this is, again, nationwide, having to go to remote learning as part of one of the options, or part of the option. You'll notice Lot Speech, as an example, says 154. Well, Lot Speech was only roughly about 30 or 35 laptops that they had, or Chromebooks, in their hand last year. This school year. So you notice that's quite a bit of an increase based on the funding that they had left over. And again, trustees, assuming nothing, let me go to San Pedro. San Pedro now has 133, but when they started off, when we started taking inventory this spring to launch our distance learning program, they only had about 30 computers as well. So you notice they were able to acquire quite a few at 133, but on the right, they still need about 97 more to be able that they'll be able to run a distance learning program for their students, or remote program. Look at Driscoll, though. Driscoll's the highest need. They went up to 105, but we still have about 424 more that we need at Driscoll to equal up to the projected enrollment of 533. That's to be able to ensure that every child at least would have a device in their hand as a first step. So what we're needing still as a school district, and we're looking for all budget type of options, we need about roughly 1,284 more devices, more Chromebooks in our school system to be able to say that we're going to be able to service all 2,749 kids through a remote program as designed. Now that's aside from the bandwidth, the Wi-Fi. It's trying to get the computers in their hands. We just put out a survey also to see who has or how many families do have a Wi-Fi capability at home. Look at all those other options. All of our campuses will have a grid, Wi-Fi grid outside of there that's going to be outside their building that will also be able to net out, to be able to have our community schools or our neighborhood schools to be able to benefit from that. But if that wouldn't make a difference if they don't have a computer in their hand. So at this point, what we're saying is we would need, and Richard today gave me a rough estimate. Well, because there's such a demand, guess what happened to the prices on Chromebooks? They also went up. So now where we were calculating roughly about $290,000 to make up that 1,284, right now it's about $354,000 to be able to make up the difference of that 1,284 devices. So about $354,000. Again, a rough estimate. That also includes licenses that have to be part of any type of initiative. Now, anything that we buy, of course, we'll try to buy in bulk for our students.
Sir, and where would this money come from?
That's what,
From
that's
our
the,
general fund?
well, the last thing we want to do is go into our fund balance, okay? Because that has implications on our final bond rating and such, and it could have some negative implications as far as our final reports. So we're looking for other options. So when Nina's saying she's trying to stretch it out to July and to try to get a good sense, that is one place. But Nina's going to talk to us about 2 or 3 options that she's looking at right now as a possibility to be able to fund us in that initiative. So Nina, you want to go ahead and talk to them about that? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. As I stated earlier, there's this CRF fund, CRF, Coronavirus Relief Fund. Should be about 600,000. They will reimburse us at about 475, which is 75%. It's coming from TETM, Texas Emergency Management. It's not coming from TEA. That's why we're waiting and waiting and waiting. That would be the optimum because that's new money. Option
But who does that go to?
Well, right now we've been told that's cities and counties money, that anything left over from the city and the county, they're supposed to share with us. So again, until that application comes out, I am hoping, right now they're saying the time period is March the 13th to May 20th. Anything you bought in that period could be reimbursed through this program. The assumption is that's going to be extended through December 31st. It's hopefully going to include school districts that can buy additional laptops and Chromebooks for students. That would be the best case scenario for us. The second one is we could issue maintenance tax notes. If you'll recall, we did a big retrofit of our lighting and HVAC. It cost, I want to say, in excess of $8 million. We're paying $500,000 a year until 24-25. So basically, it's a big loan. If we borrowed $350,000 today, we would want to pay it off. You can go as far as 7 years, but those Chromebooks aren't going to last 7 years. So that would be not financially prudent. If we stretch it over 3 years, it would cost about $130,000, $120,000 a year. So that would take up that $98,000 plus some in just 1 year. However, as I said, I've really scrubbed the budget. My concern with scrubbing my budget is I don't know what our ADA is. TEA this year is going to calculate our ADA. Our ADA is going to be our first 4-6 weeks. So I know what that number is. And then they're going to adjust it for the last 2 6 weeks based on some historical data. So I've gone low, thinking maybe we would drop 90 to 97%. Went through all the budgets and made a little mistake that I'm real proud of. I budgeted this year for a bus payment. We paid those 2 buses off last year. So there's $89,000 that's definitely going to fall out of this budget. Additionally, we're changing our calendar and it's going to increase our instructional days in August. So I have to recognize additional state funding based on how many instructional days. That's an additional $90,000 this year in state funding. As I stated earlier, I think it's very conservative that we will, 75,000 will fall out of utilities. I think it might be more than that, but a conservative amount would be 75,000. And I've identified at least 100,000 in our contingency accounts that could be devoted to these laptops. Just happens, Chromebooks, excuse me. It totals 354,000. So all that being said, I think we can order starting early the third week of July when we get back. Once I see that application, I think we can go ahead and order and get them in before school starts. That is our hope.
Is that a probable, is it possible, Dr. Moreno, that they come in that quick?
I was going back on no, ma'am. No, right now they're all on back order. So it's one of those things where the sooner we order, the better. That's why we're looking at all options. But I was going back to Ms. Roldan, what the state had mentioned on our last commissioner meeting last week. They called it Operation Connectivity. But they were very, very brief as far as what that meant. So all that tells me is that they're trying to figure something out. But at this point, there is no commitment as far as what that means for us as a school district right now. The big focus that has been the past 2 weeks is on the instructional part of the program or expectations from the state. There was a big push on attendance last week as far as really taking school serious, because when I explained the model that we're going to be looking at, kids will not be going to school 5 days a week, the average on average. Yeah. On average, they'd be going to school 2 days a week, because part of the expectation is that we still look at the safety of our schools. And one classroom, which could have held about an average of 25 kids, we're now looking at 11 to 12 kids based on square footage because of the 6-foot radius. So I'll explain some of that with you a little bit later in the agenda item. But going back to that comment, it's Operation Connectivity is what they'd mentioned. But again, there was no direction or any type of guarantee of anything at that point.
So do you think that, are you going to follow up, or how will we know?
Well, we're just waiting. I mean, we're at the mercy of the state. So we meet with the commissioner every Tuesday and Thursday. So all they did is basically they planted that seed with us at this point, but we don't know. We're superintendents. We're week to week to week to review what the status is and moving forward.
I guess, Nina, the question would be at this point, I mean, the district has to fund whatever we're going to purchase. So one way or another, we have to come up with the funding for it. But if we get either some assistance through that Operation Connectivity, or either, anything that comes later through a grant to the city that's connected with the school district, then I guess we get reimbursed, right? If we pay it up front, we'll get reimbursed if any of those options become open for us, right?
As a general statement, yes. Sometimes if you buy something early and then a grant comes out, they won't reimburse you from before the grant. They will only reimburse you from the date that the grant got stamped in forward.
Wow. Nina, the CRF, the COVID relief fund, that's not a grant, is it?
Yes, ma'am. It is a grant. It's the calculation is $250 per student that's on our free and reduced count. For our district, that's $600,000, but they're only going to fund 75%. It's a FEMA thing. FEMA only pays 75%. And TDEM, which is FEMA, Texas Department of Emergency Management, they're the ones that have this grant and that are going to disperse the money. So until those rules and regs come out, I really would hate to do a bunch of purchase orders with $350,000 and then them say, nope, sorry.
Is there a deadline? Have you seen anything yet on that?
All we've been told is right now the time frame is March 13th through May 20th. Whatever you spent in that time frame, which not many people spent much of anything because we were closed. But the grant is supposed to be, the application is supposed to come out in July. Corey Green at TEA said it's his understanding mid-July.
But didn't we buy laptops during that time for our kids?
Yeah, but not to the tune of $450,000.
No,
We
I
did
know
buy
that.
some.
We'll get those reimbursed, hopefully, right?
Yes, ma'am. If the money comes to us. So far, they're saying it's cities and counties. Any money left over that the cities and counties don't spend can be dispersed to schools.
So there's no guarantee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Maybe what we have to do is at one time, go to the reserve, unreserved balance and get some money to pay for everything. If we have no other alternative.
Well, I think I can do this without hitting reserve by just I call scrubbing my budget, seeing where there's additional funding left over that may not be utilized, like utilities.
Right now, you listed all the savings, and it's what, 254,000?
354.
354, okay.
And Dr. Moreno says he needs about 350, so I found it.
Pretty close. Okay.
But will we be needing any more money out of there besides the 354 that Dr. Moreno wants? You said you found 350, right?
Yes, sir. That's a great question, sir. The main place that needs money at this time of year is generally maintenance. And I looked through his budget and he's got enough funding. And I'm not taking all of our contingency. There's still some contingency money left for any mishap that may happen between now and August 31st. But he's got plenty of money for, I'm sorry?
But it's definitely on a very tight budget. I mean, that's what we've been told all this past few months, and what we're doing right now, even what Nina's looking at, that does put us at a very, very tight budget. So if there's a couple of mishaps here or there or something mechanical, it's just trying to keep within the means of what we can to operate. Hopefully in July, like I said, or Nino's saying in mid-July, we'll have a much better idea. But right now we're on hold.
Well, I totally understand where we're at, but I'm looking at the next one down our list where I put it as an agenda item for the employees that work, essential employees that worked during the COVID. And did we get an amount of people that actually came in at the onset, the beginning?
Yeah. If we're ready to move to the next one then?
Well, no, I'm just because we're talking about the budget and not. And
But you can bring it up when we're on that item, Bertha.
I guess so. Well,
Yes.
I can wait. That's fine.
Was that all your presentation, Nina, or were you gonna go through anything else?
No, ma'am, that's it. Again, if y'all, have an idea of which you prefer, option 1 or option 2, you're not voting on it, but I would just kind of like to have an idea so I can move forward, start calculating salaries.
Okay. Ultimately, trustees, of course, it's under your direction. I think that we could manage the 2% for our employees, but that will be at a $250 winter incentive.
Okay. And that's not going to take out for the laptops, right? That's separate.
No, that's separate. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we're trying to do laptops this year, not next year.
I understand.
We're trying to do it in this year's budget.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay.
So we're gonna do laptops this year, and then we're also gonna have this incentive this year, and it's all coming out of fund balance.
No, ma'am, the incentive, I'm sorry if I confused y'all. The laptops, like I said, I scrubbed current year budget to see where there's money left over to potentially purchase $350,000 worth of Chromebooks. So that's in the 1920 budget that would normally fall out into fund balance.
Okay.
So in other words,
Option 1 and 2 is next year's budget.
Yeah. It would have carried over to next year's budget, 2021.
Yes, had that 350, if it does truly fall out, it would go into fund balance and we could be utilizing it next year if needed.
Yes.
Okay.
But you're
But
gonna
we wanna
use it
get that
on this
over.
budget, aren't you? You want
I'm
to use
sorry?
it now.
Yes, sir. We would prefer to do it now if at all possible.
I don't have a problem with that. You know.
Okay,
go
so
with
you
the-
want us to look at the draft 1 and option 1 and option 2. Option 1 with a 2%, that would put that money throughout the year to the retirement system, correct? The
Correct.
2%.
Yes, sir.
On the 1%, it's less going into the retirement system. If I was an employee, I was put myself like that. I would like to have it on my retirement in the long run, but that's just my way of thinking. Come Christmas time, you give them $250, and last year we gave $800, so that's a big difference. But of course, we didn't have all the expenses with this COVID that we're having this past year.
Yeah.
So there is there's something to think about.
But we need to understand as a board and you know, hard times are coming right now.
Yeah.
Because of
No,
the COVID right now. Hard times are bad. You know, a lot of people are being laid off. I don't know what's going to happen, you know, but it's getting freaking bad.
Dr. Moreno, what would be, as an employee, and Nina, I mean, I'm just saying, what would be the recommendation? Because honestly, I mean, a lot of people need money up front. I'm not saying that I know it benefits. I think the 2% in the retirement would be better. That helps that account for them. But I just don't know if people actually need the fund now. And they
But,
would.
During Christmas, you mean?
I'm just saying, in general, people need money.
The average has been $250. That's been the past few years. That's been the norm. The year before last, it was at $400, which again that would have been on the high end at $400. But then again, because of some additional funding that Nina was able to get based on I think it was property tax. Nina, as a one-time deal. That's where we're able to get that additional $400. And I made it real clear to our staff. This is a one-time deal. It's not something to be expected every year to be able to get to $400 and then another $400. When you look at the 2%,
we were very generous last year.
Yes, sir.
And I think most of them understand that. I mean, and we came together as a board and gave them that extra funding as a Christmas bonus, as a thank you. I can't imagine them expecting that same thing, you know, this next bonus, especially with everyone understanding what everybody in society right now is going through. I think they'll understand if their bonus is a lot less, substantially less from what it was last year, they'll understand why. I mean, we're not living in the norm right now, unfortunately. And our priority, and I'm not taking away from our educators or the staff, but the priority right now is getting kids and getting our children their laptops and their Chromebooks so they can get their education, not the Christmas bonus.
Yes, sir.
That's just my opinion.
Right.
So right
Dr.
now, by
Moreno, I have
giving them a 2%, go ahead, ma'am.
So
By giving
I
the
know
2%.
that. No,
Go
go
ahead, Ms.
ahead.
Martha.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Martha.
So we're approving the budget for next year, but is it going to be affected with the attendance for online learning versus attendance?
Yes.
Aren't these numbers going to be affected next year?
Yes, ma'am. ADA is going to be a big player as far as the funding. That's what we don't know. That's where we're still still waiting to see how that formula is going to work out for us, again, for next year's budget. Because the expectation from the state is that kids will still meet the 90% compulsory law of attendance. So for us, we have to monitor that daily, even if they're not in the classroom. We have to figure out the plan on how we monitor that piece. The other thing that they're stressing is there has to be daily evidence of progress of a student. We can't wait till Friday. It's daily that our teachers are going to have to document how the students are making progress on a daily basis. And those are some of the things I'm going to share some more information on the model for next year. So going back to the whether it be 1% at 400 or 2% raise at 250, when we look at our teaching staff, they're roughly going to get about 1,000. Do you have the exact number, Nina?
1,025.
1,025 with a 2% raise based on the midpoint. So, you know, that's definitely a 2% right now is is something that I think would be appreciated. Now the Christmas, again, the winter incentive at $250, that was the norm before.
Okay.
So I just want to say it again. We need to be careful with our expenses, don't we, sir? Because we don't know how much funding we're going to get, because we're depending on the parents to make sure that the kids are signing on when they're supposed to during online learning times, correct?
For next year's budget, we have to be very, that's where Nina's right now is trying to be as conservative as possible, because we just don't know. That's why in a good way, it's good that we wouldn't pass our budget till August, because by that point, obviously, we'd have a lot more information. July is going to be a pivotal time for all of us, because the state at that point is going to have a much better delivery plan that all of us as superintendents will be able to start to really finalize. So there's quite a bit of unknown still.
How was attendance during these last couple of months of closure? Attendance on virtual learning.
No, it's something we struggled with along with all of our school districts. I mean, it's tough because students don't take it as serious because they weren't in school. Now, the difference of the spring compared to the fall, obviously there'll be a shift. Because, that was a reaction at that point. We all had to react and put a system in place. But, as it is, when we're struggling to have kids in school on a daily basis, imagine now that if not being physically at a campus, it's a lot harder, Ms. Orona, to continue to keep up that same momentum. We definitely need the support of our whole school district as a whole, our community, our parents. I mean, everybody just pitching in together to help continue to push the importance of education. But the state is not, they made it real clear to us. There's going to be the 90% compulsory law that will be implemented in order to get funding, as well as the assignments and grading and student progress on a daily basis. They've made that super clear to us as superintendents, that's going to be an accountability piece for them.
Wow.
It's scary, Eva. It's scary.
To continue to keep up that same momentum.
I think
I've been looking on.
Parents can be confident that their kids are going to be safe.
Yeah, I've been looking online. The district put out the calendar, and I saw a lot of reaction on the parents, and they're worried. They're worried about sending the kids.
And Ms. Roldan, that reaction is the same, because we meet a superintendent, like tomorrow I have another superintendent meeting. And we're all in the same boat. It's that part, because as parents, we just are, what's getting us is the fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. And so what we have to do is we have to plan for the worst, make sure we have all of our safety protocols in place. That's why when I say that, and I'll explain the A and B schedule to you, that we're looking at that model, basically look at it this way. We can no longer have a school full of 600 kids, 650 at the high school. It's going to be half of that. It's going to be 325 kids we'd have 2 days a week based on the schedule that we set up. And that's the only way also that we can have transportation. We can't have a full bus of 66 kids or 70 kids. We have to think about our routes and then bring that down. On average, we're going to have about 25 kids on a bus based on bus routes.
Dr. Moreno, have we emphasized that schedule to the parents now, or not yet, because we don't know whether we're going to go that route?
No, definitely what we're planning, and again, I have my meeting tomorrow, superintendents, we all have our models that we're presenting. Most of us are going through an A-B type of schedule, which I'm going to present at another board agenda item a little bit more. So that's a lot clearer. So the U.S. trustees, you helped us out quite a bit last week. We adopted a calendar. That was phase one. Now we've already put together a bell schedule, which I'm going to present to you today as well. And now we've honed in on an A-B schedule, which I'm going to talk about today. Now we're just going to work out the details and the kinks in it. And then right when we get back from the holiday, we'll start to present on a weekly basis, giving parents updates to start really giving them the information that they need to be able to answer the questions.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So with all that, I'm leaning towards, to answer Nina's question, leaning towards option probably 2. That's my deal. I don't know if anybody wants to voice their opinion.
On option 2 is the one with the 250?
No, it's 1% with 400.
That would be less for the retirement, right?
Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
less from retirement.
Okay.
It's more upfront than later. This is for this year, because this coming year, because of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen, and people might be more strapped for money during the holiday.
They're going to be strapped for money anyhow, anywhere, right now.
True, very true.
I know they're getting another stimulus check, but, they blow it away right away.
We know, is that a fact already? Do we know?
I kind of heard it, but it's still on the work. That politics right now.
Okay. I don't know if anybody else wants to let Nina know what they're thinking, but that's my thought on it.
You want to know this so you prepare for the next meeting, Nina, just to get an idea, because obviously the decision can change at the last minute, but you just want some thoughts. Okay.
Oh. I'll also go with option 2, if it's okay.
That's a 1% raise with a 400 winter incentive.
Yeah. And they have to understand that it's either or, and you can't pull them right now because,
Right.
you can't ask them what they want. They want everything. So it's just a decision that the board's got to make, and live with it.
Right.
Well, we'll start.
Depending on the option that kind of has, more of a favor, how does that affect you in making adjustments for us? If the final date, August 31st, comes around and the decision is opposite?
I would have to go into payroll and redo everybody's salaries. I'm trying to kind of get an idea so that while I'm off the next 2 weeks, I've got to go in and calculate 450 employees' salaries.
I see.
So if I could get a jump on that, if y'all don't know that, that's fine. I won't do that. But if you were strongly wanting to go with option 1, then I can already go ahead and start calculating all those salaries and be ready when we get back July 13th to have, to finalize the budget.
Nina, on your computer, you couldn't just plug in a percent on how much, whatever percent everybody's salary is and just get a number?
Oh, I can get the number, but I have to go into Skyward and change everybody's 450 salaries in Skyward.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah, everybody's different. That's right. Okay.
Right. And again, trustees, just to be clear, again, we can't vote on it, but it's just trying to get a sense of, that's why she's asking that question.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, anybody else got an opinion on it or how you guys want to do it?
I'm undecided, Oscar.
Okay. Mr. Lopez?
I'm back and forth on them. I am leaning more towards option 1
Okay.
than I am 2. I just think that's just more feasible. Whether they need the money or don't need the money beforehand, I don't know. This is, it's complicated to just make that decision at this very moment for me.
Well, I guess you have to work on option 1 and well, we know what option 1 is already. So, and option 2, it's so hard.
Yeah, it might be a good idea to do the 2% up front, and if at the end it goes to the opposite, then that might be easier to be fixed, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure it's still the same job. You have to go into each one separately. Yeah,
And that's
so
fine. I'll just wait. I was just hoping to kind of get a jump on it. I'll
Aren't we having another workshop in a couple of weeks?
Yes, we'll have on the 20th, we think we could combine our workshop with a board agenda, the regular board meeting on July the 20th, and then we'll start going from there. We'll tie some pieces in. And we'll have hopefully some more information.
July the,
Okay.
you said July the
I
20th?
guess,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Moreno, even board members that are not present, I mean, they could give, they could email Nina any opinion they want anyway beforehand, right? During this next.
I think it'll probably be best to just go ahead and wait and let's see what's happening. And on the 20th, she'll have a much better idea.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All right, we go to item B, sir.
Yes, sir. So on item B, trustees to discuss.
Thank you, Nina. Sorry.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
On item B, it's discussion of incentive pay for non-exempt employees who worked during school closure due to COVID-19 from March 23rd, 2020 through May 21st, 2020. At this point, I was asked to again, bring up this particular item for discussion. And today, what I wanted for us to be able to go over is just a model. So the number that you would see is not an actual amount. Okay, I mean, yes, it's just so we can go through a model of possibly if this is the way that the board wanted to go, and if there's a certain amount of funds, then this is a possibility of how to come up with a number that's fair and equitable. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be from March 23rd through May 21st. That was just a range of time as well. So I'll go ahead and have Nina just present one of the models that she came up with. And again, trustees, this is a false number. It's just to show you the process on a possibility of how that would be worked out.
Okay.
Okay, you received a document, and I'm sorry I didn't print it out, but it shows employee 1 through 20.
Yes.
Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we actually had 183 employees that clocked in at some point between March the 23rd and May the 21st. 183 employees. So what I did, I took that spreadsheet and pulled employees with 3 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, all the way up to 279 hours. So that's what you have in front of you. Even though they're named employee 1, 2, 3, 4, those are actual employees. So again, this is just a sample of how we might go about distributing funds that if we can, identify additional funds. So in this scenario, let's go with employee 1. They worked a total of 201.9 hours. Okay? At the bottom of that column, all those employees worked a total of 2179.23. So I got a percentage. Employee 1, in the percent per hour, employee 1 would receive 9.31% of the funds. If we looked at per hour worked, that's option 1. Option 2 would be at their pay, because everybody's at a different pay rate.
And let me stop you right there, Nina. Just assuming nothing, trustees, because it took me a little bit when I first looked at it. You'll notice that it's highlighted, or it's a bold print. You see the option 1 bold print at the top? Right. Go down 2 columns, option 2 bold print, and option 3. I didn't see that initially for a while until I caught on to that later on in our discussion. So just so you know that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so again, option 1 would be distributing this $20,000 based on number of hours in the pool. So employee 1 worked 9.31% of the total hours worked. So he would get 9.31%, or she, of the pot. That's option 1. Option 2 looks at how much did we actually pay employee 1. So it's not just hours, it also includes their pay rate. So it's more equitable based on their salary than option 1 would be. Option 1 is more equitable by just looking at hours worked. So that same employee, when you look at their pay against everyone else's, they would get a little bit more. They would get 9.46% of the pot. For a total of $18.92, it's only $30, but that particular employee, you know, it's not a lot difference. Some of them are quite different, like from 11.3% to 10%. And then option 3 is how much is in the pot? How many employees do we have? Split it equally. In this case, if we had a $20,000 to distribute and we just happen to have 20 employees, each of them would get $1,000. However, we have 183 employees whose ranged anywhere from 15 minutes to 279 hours. So if we just split it by number of employees that worked, each employee would get $109.29. And I'm open for more options. These are just the 3 that I came up with.
Yeah, this is a good way. That's a good breakdown.
Any questions?
And I just want to make sure that I state it because I know we're live streaming. Oh, go ahead, sir.
That could be used to buy more Chromebooks for our children.
Yeah. So we have employees that only work 3 hours only.
We actually have an employee that only worked 15 minutes.
Okay.
In this whole time period.
Right. We're not looking at those employees. We're looking at the employees that came out during on the beginning in March, and they were essential workers, and they worked mainly almost the whole time. Not 15 minutes, not an hour, not 3 hours. Those employees that were out there on the front lines putting their lives at danger.
Well, you could have put your life at danger working 2 minutes.
Yes.
True,
Yes.
but still, you know.
They're still just as essential as the one who worked 30 hours.
That's true.
But at the end of the day, we need to look at what's feasible and what we're here to do. Our obligation, yes, is to the staff, but our obligation is also to these children. And these children do not have the resources to buy Chromebooks. And if this little bit of money here that we save can buy 10 or 15 or 20 more Chromebooks so our children can succeed, then that money needs to go towards that, not to somebody who risked their life by being out on the side. We risked our lives by going out to those board meetings that we were still having in March and April, sitting in a boardroom with each other. What did we not?
Well, yeah, but that was our choice.
That was just as essential.
Yeah,
we understand that, Victor. I think that because see, Nina, in the budget part of the meeting, she already explained that the funding's already there for the laptops.
Right, no, I heard her. I was here for the whole meeting.
This is kind of like going a little bit, out of the norm to try to just give an incentive for those people who actually did. And it's not a high number. I really thought it was going to be like 300 people. I mean, I thought it was going to be more. So 183 is not that many. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the ratio that we'd like to see, who contributed more hours on the onset and stuff like that. That's the option we can. This is not for today anyway, right, Dr. Moreno? It's a discussion item?
Yeah, it's just discussion item because we were going to present a model. And that's why I want to make sure that I'm clear and I state it because I know we're being live streamed. Is that these are not valid numbers. This is
great.
This is not, because when you see that 1,000, it's easy to understand, or here, we're going to get 1,000. No, these are false numbers. It's just a model. It's a framework.
Yeah, because we don't have 20 employees. We have 183 employees that came out.
Right. Okay.
All right. Well,
and I just want to mention that these 183 employees did get paid time and a half, correct?
No.
Correct.
Did they?
So they were given a choice to come into work.
Correct.
And so where is this money going to come from? From our general balance, our general fund?
The only way we can is to see what we have left after that July time period. Once we start closing
you're
out.
Looking at what was the total for the laptops, Dr. Moreno? You said it was 300,000 you needed?
It's 350,000. Actually, it is 354,000. I think Nina mentioned that number. That was one of the last quotes that we got. We're still waiting for another quote.
Okay,
Right.
so there could be some
And of course-
flexibility there.
And of course, we're gonna do this before we do any incentive, to answer Hector's, understand that our children need the laptops, and we're gonna do that before anything else. That's a given. That's a given.
I think we're missing part of it. It's not just the Chromebook that our children needs. It's all the hotspots that we need for these children. That is going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars for a district to be able to accommodate our children citywide with Wi-Fi access. And Dr.
Don't we
Moreno
have
can tell
that
you how
covered
much
already with
Dr. Moreno's already looked into that, and we already know, and Nina can tell you, it's not going to be cheap. I don't care what carrier we go with to be able to have these hotspots all over town for our children. So it's not just the Chromebook, but it's also the accessibility for that Chromebook.
Right. We understand that, but weren't we gonna have a satellite in each campus, Dr. Moreno?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, the grid that we would create at every campus, and that's roughly going to run us about $20,000 to make that happen at every, with all the campuses.
Uh-huh.
But that'll give us a range that either parents can drive up to or kids can come up closer to. I mean, obviously, if they're close to the school, they're going to get it automatically. It can go up to half a mile, can go up to a little bit more, close to a mile. Just depends on where our kids are at. As an example, just going back to what Mr. Hector Lopez mentioned right now, we actually leased 275 hotspots that were for the spring. And of course, they all got on back order because everybody's ordering them at the same time. And the company gave us a deal, it's 2 months free. And then, of course, we start to pay after the third month. But for that 275 alone is roughly $8,000. So to say that, and no superintendent right now is going to tell you that they can afford for their school districts to even think about doubling or tripling that, because there's no way. So the grid that we would create would be one thing. For those of our students that live further out that don't have, then we can prioritize some of those hotspots to them and still even try to get a few more hotspots, obviously. But until, like, we just did a survey, that's going to give us some good data back from our families. And right now, I think I'm gonna round it up. I think we're close to about 600 responses. I think we're at 550 or something like that, which is a good start. We're going to continue pushing that. I'm also going to be sending out a letter to reinforce that as well with some of the upcoming details. But that's just up to what we know. So when I get to that part of the item, I'll also explain the model that will be gradually explained to our parents.
Okay.
And
So
you
we'll
said
get
8,000 monthly or?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
Monthly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That can't be the sole way to ensure that our kids have access. Now, there's still a lot of programs where, like Sprint or the company Spectrum, but they all also want memberships. So they'll give families 2-3 months for free Wi-Fi access, but then they're going to want them to become members, of course. But the one thing I can say is that there are a lot of companies that have been very responsive to try to help out schools, and we'll continue to try to bank on that as Region 2 superintendents to do whatever we can for our communities. But because our cell phones could have a hotspot, but that's if you have the right plan. Right? And then again, some will have limited and some will be unlimited. These hotspots would be unlimited. Of course, that's a plan that we got. But again, we don't know what we don't know until we start really gathering more of the data. But the assurance regardless is, can we get a device in every child's hands? Because here's what happens too. When they are in school, most of the program that they'll be following also is going to be a combination of both interactive with face-to-face as well as interactive on our devices. So if we can become a one-to-one district, that's half of the battle that we just won right now.
Okay.
And then just Nina, to clarify, this incentive pay for these employees that work during the COVID time that the school was closed, that's coming from the monies from this school year, the current school year. So these internet hotspots and whatever service we're going to need for next school year, Dr. Moreno, that's going to be part. You'll work that, whatever decision we're going to go with, you're going to work that into the new budget, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
of course, the actual laptops, we're trying to work from this year. Excuse me, the Chromebooks and devices. But of course, the budget for next year, that's something different. That's thinking ahead on other. But right now, we're trying to find what monies we have now to be able to do that, to buy what we need, because we can't, if we commit to something because everybody's doing the same thing, they're trying to order in bulk. It's, there's a time period to that. I'd love for us to say day one, we're ready to roll. But there's no
Will Nina have an amount, Dr. Moreno? Sorry, would she have an amount that's gonna, if you have that broadband extended out in every campus, do you have a school year's, like a figure of what it would cost for the school year? Like,
Well,
'cause I know you're talking if you're gonna give hotspots, it's like $8,000. What is it? Monthly?
Yeah, monthly. And that's not to misinterpret it, because we can't give a hotspot to every child, because that's
No, I
there's
know
no
that.
way. But we prioritize where those needs are, and we're also trying to gather who's already got Wi-Fi at home or who has Wi-Fi access based on certain devices. And then, of course, looking at our families closest to the schools, because we'll be able to open up the range up to a certain point. That'll also allow us to again, start to reprioritize. That, regardless, to do the install is going to be about $20,000, but then we'll have the grid capability at every campus.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And you say that's gonna cost $8,000 a month for the
No,
grid?
ma'am, the hotspots that we are leasing right now is roughly $8,000 a month.
Okay,
We have 275 in our possession. right now.
20,000 for the grid on each campus.
No, yes, total for
Okay.
all 7
Total,
campuses.
total, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a lot of money.
It is, I know, a lot.
I mean, I just don't understand. I would love to give our employees benefits. I'm one of those advocates to always want to give our employees additional stipends and extra Christmas bonuses. And if I could give them an Easter bonus, I'd vote to give them an Easter bonus. Unfortunately, it's just not feasible. And these employees that worked COVID, they're greatly appreciated, as is everyone else that's gone out there and put themselves out at, in the front lines. I do it every morning with 300, 400 customers that walk into my store every day. And so do so many other people who go out to their jobs. Nina, Dr. Moreno, they go into their office every day surrounded by other people who they have no idea where they've been and what they're going to get. And nobody else is expecting additional pay. And it's not like we're not paying these employees who have come out. There's 183 employees who came out knowing exactly what we all know. They were going to get paid time and a half. They're getting their time and a half. We didn't shortchange them any. I'm not too sure why we want to spend another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to thank them for doing what we all signed up to do. We all signed up to advocate and to be here for our children and our staff, and that's what we've done.
I know.
So I'm just, and I'm setting politics aside here. Whether my election's coming up in November or not, I'm not here trying to get votes. What I'm trying to do right now is save the district money and get Chromebooks for our children, because that's a lot of money that can get us more hotspots, more Chromebooks, or more whatever it is that we need so our children can succeed, versus an extra couple of $100 in somebody's pocket, for them, which I don't comprehend, because they've been paid.
Well, Hector,
time
I
and a
understand
half.
what you're saying, but you're making it sound like the Chromebooks is not the priority. I think that's been established, Dr. Moreno. You said that's a must. That's not an option. That's going to happen. This other item that's on the agenda that's not an item to be voted on, it's not something we're decided on today. This is an option for this board to consider in the next future meetings. I don't know when it'll come up to us, but I don't want people to get confused either, Hector, that you had people volunteering. Dr. Moreno called them and they came in. But you did have some people that didn't want to come in, Dr. Moreno. And right now our numbers on these positive cases are going up even higher than what we were initially. Nueces County didn't have as many cases as we have now. So look at this objective, Hector, that what if we have a higher number starting the school year and and you close the school again, Dr. Moreno, do you think employees are going to come in? You know, those are the things we have to look at.
Yeah, you know what, for time and a half, most people will.
Well,
Most people
but we
make
did have people
$7.
that didn't come in because they want to protect their families. So that's all this is about. It's not about a decision right now. So I hope we don't kind of like just make it sound like we're not doing the laptops over this. It's not even that. We all know that the Chromebooks are a must.
Yeah, but do you go to work, like, did you go to work today?
Yeah, I adjusted my schedule because of this.
Right, we all have. Now, and I'm assuming your employer paid you for
Yeah,
your-
but I think we're going off in another area that's not where we need to go.
Actually, we're not going off in another area. I'm just
Yes,
saying.
we are, because obviously this is not an agenda item, Hector.
I know,
It's not
but
for us to vote.
It's an item that we're discussing, and all I'm asking you is, me as an employer, I have my employees come in, they get paid their hourly rate, but there's not a section on their check that says COVID pay for those who wanted to come out and get paid.
I don't know what other districts or other schools have done, Hector. I know they've done stuff. We don't know.
Well,
Dr.
what have
Moreno
they
can
done?
look
If you
into
don't
it.
know what have they
Maybe
done?
that's something we can bring into the next meeting, Dr. Moreno, if this is an option. Has other school districts done anything for their employees outside of the norm? I'm sure they have. I just think we need to look into that. In order for us to make a decision. We're not making a decision tonight.
I think it goes from district to district, you know.
No, but they can go with certain areas. He can
I
have
understand.
superintendents. Y'all have superintendent meetings quite a bit, weekly, I think, Dr. Moreno. I think those are things that we can bring forward if we needed to. So I'm just saying this is an optional thing.
Go ahead.
I want to say something, Oscar. I mean, I'm with Hector on this entire thing. Not that our employees are not important, because they are. But what are our teachers going to think if we do this? You know, our teachers were working 16 to 20 hours every day on online learning. Parents were not doing their work until the weekend or in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Our teachers did all that. Are we going to give them a bonus because they worked 24/7 during COVID?
They were at home though, Lori. They weren't out, you know.
How is that going to make us matter, Eva? I mean, it doesn't matter, but the work is work. Work is work.
No,
I'm just saying.
the only reason why this.
That is my issue. Everybody has their issue. We all have our right to have our issue. That's my issue.
Okay.
I'm with Hector on this one, not because they're not important. They are. They got paid for their time that they worked. What about our teachers? How is this going to make them feel? And now we're getting set up again for next year to be worse. I just want to throw that out there. I know everybody cringes every time I say something. It doesn't matter. I'm going to say it anyways. That's how I feel. And I just wonder how that's going to make them feel, because we're omitting them. We're omitting their dedication that they did during all of these weeks. I know. Trust me, I dealt with 8 teachers for my one son, and it was hard. It was hard for them. It was hard. And I was only one parent. They deal with 30 to 40 to 50 parents every day for the remainder of the year that the whole school was closed. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right. I think we had enough of discussion on this item. We'll come back with it. Dr. Moreno, we need to go to the item 6 on the instruction, sir. It's discuss the instructional model related to COVID-19 for the 2021.
Okay, so trustees, at this point, what I'd like to do is just to be able to catch you up as far as our thinking and preparation for the 2020-2021 school year. And again, for us at the district level, we are week to week receiving further direction from TEA, our Texas Education Agency. I will say this because I believe that the Texas Education Agency has been extremely supportive, and even for our commissioner to be able to talk to us twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, or Mondays and Wednesdays initially. And so we've had quite a bit to help us shape what the possibility of a program would look like. And of course, the interaction and communication. But again, because of the spike that we're seeing right now, I can definitely feel a sense that there's some brakes that are being pushed on right now, because we don't know what it's truly going to look like a month from now. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's the fear of our parents, and rightly so. But what we'll do is we'll plan for the worst, make sure that we have the safety measures in place for based on the CDC guidelines. and do our very best to try to make sure that our staff and our students are safe when they come to our schools. Now, again, we can't control if there's all of a sudden schools are shut down or the state shuts down again, but we know that we have to have a framework and a model heading forward. So the first thing, trustees, I want to thank you again. Last week you helped us out as a district as a whole, and now we have a calendar. So we have an intersession calendar, which was one of the options that the governor, as well as, the commissioner of education was really stressing for us, is to have time built in within the year that would allow us, in case we lose time or in case we need to catch up with certain students, that we have a whole week of intervention we could provide to them in a much, much smaller group. So that was step one. Step two, if you notice in your packet, is the next step. So all of you, if you look at this particular document, will show you, when I say step two, is knowing that we can only have basically almost half of our students in our classrooms, because there is a requirement that you look at 6 foot radius to be able to have social distancing within our classrooms. It's basically conceptually is cutting the student enrollment in half as far as who attends school on a daily basis. So in order to help us out with transportation purposes as well, which ties into this particular document, we had to change up our bell schedule. So now what we're doing is for elementary, intermediate, which again, all of our elementary schools and Ortiz being our intermediate campus, they would begin school at 7:40 a.m. until 3:10. What that will allow us to do is now bring in, do our first round of pickups in the morning on the buses with only elementary students. That would also allow us to cut the number in half, or more than in half, on our buses, because remember, the average amount of kids on a bus could be 66 to 70 kids. At first, we wanted to stagger them like every other seat and then even across the aisle, and that was bringing us down to about 12 kids, which is, we weren't no way going to make it on one round with only 12 children. So, but safely still looking at it and even putting one child per seat, which at this point we should be able to do, even with some of the recommendations from the state, it would be about roughly 25, 26 kids per bus. Also considering if they have a family member or sibling, that they would be able to, of course, obviously sit with their sibling. So that would allow us to maybe add a few more kids on the bus at that point, because they're family. But this then would allow us to, after the kids are dropped off elementary, then we're going to start junior high and high school a little bit later. Their new start time would be 8:15 to 4:10. That would allow us then, again, another round of buses to go pick up the secondary kids. And that way we'd always divide the amount of kids on our buses. Right now, we think that this model is going to work. We've looked at our numbers. One other thing, we haven't finalized just yet, trustees, but in order to help out our families, and again, this is still in the works, but we would look at, for example, an A schedule and a B schedule. And Lorena, Ms. Ceballos is going to present that to you so you have a better understanding of it. But that means like Jose Moreno would go to school every Monday and every Wednesday. And then you have Lorena Ceballos group is going to go every Tuesday and every Thursday. So realistically, kids would only go to school twice a week. But the model that we're trying to develop is because there is an expectation, is what are they doing on, if I'm going Monday and Wednesday, what am I doing on Tuesdays and on Thursdays? Because I'm accountable for that. So that's part of what Lorena is going to talk to you about today. But ultimately, the big goal, trustees, as you're asked, is our goal with this is to try to cut the numbers in half of our campuses in order to be able to truly follow the distance, social distancing guidelines from the state. At this point, based on our model, we should be able to do it effectively. So Lorena, if you don't mind, go ahead and share your document. That way you can give them a better sense of what an A-B schedule would look like. And trustees, I'll say it again, we have a lot of details to finalize on this, but now we have at least a model that we're going to be able to follow from elementary to high school.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Moreno, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a sample AB daily schedule that Dr. Moreno was referencing throughout his throughout the meeting today. So based on the guidance that the commissioners gave to everyone last Tuesday in his call, we went ahead and took a look. We took a look at what an AB schedule and what a schedule for our students, thinking about our own community, the needs of our community and our students, and what we could actually be able to do with always safety in mind for everyone. So as we discussed, the models that were the options of the models that were out there with our principals, the executive team, ourselves, and what we're able to do, we narrowed down our options to an A and B daily schedule. Again, this is a sample of what it would look like. Like Dr. Moreno said, there is a lot of details to be worked out, but the framework would essentially look like this. So we are planning on having students face-to-face, and that is the top part of this schedule, this AB schedule. This would be students coming to school and being in-seat time in front of the teacher. So the AB schedule would work in terms of Monday, Group A would come in. Those students that were identified as, in Group A would come in on Monday. And of course, they follow the bell schedule that was presented to you a minute ago. They would be here, they would be in the classroom at 7:40 and then just follow their traditional day, following our new bell schedule. They would get their reading time, their math time, their science, their social studies, their PE, their intervention, the lessons that we would normally give the students when they're in seat. Along with that, there would be a time in the schedule where teachers would pre-teach some of the online lessons that would be expected for the children to do the next day when they do not come to school. Because the A-B schedule means they come one day yes, one day no, one day yes, one day no. As you can see in this schedule, Group A would come Monday and Wednesday, and Group B would come Tuesday and Thursday. So again, the question, well, then what do you do when you don't come to school? Well, they would then, the teacher, before they left that Monday with Group A, would tell the students, these are the lessons that are on your Google Classroom that you would need to, that you need to complete tomorrow when you're at home doing your learning, your remote instruction. And I'll show you what that schedule looks like in a minute. So the next day on Tuesday, Group B would come in. And they would, again, those are your face-to-face students, and they would follow the bell schedule, similar concept as Group A. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So let me move on to what would the students do then at home when they're not in seat in the classroom face-to-face? Okay, so Group B, you notice that on Monday, Group A comes to school? Then that means that Group B is at home doing what TEA and what we know as asynchronous instruction. What that means is it's a distance learning, similar to what we did in the spring. It's a self-paced model, but there is accountability tied to that. And the accountability last Tuesday was, the commissioner was very clear about following an asynchronous model type of distance learning, is that there is, the attendance still has to be taken. There are three, he gave three different examples as to how to measure attendance. And so I'll talk about that in a minute. But the asynchronous model, then Group B would be doing the asynchronous distance learning model. It is a self-paced. However, the lessons would be prepared, planned out, put on their Google Classroom. We have learning management systems that we use in our district, such as Think Through Math, Imagine Learning, the Blueprint and iStation. It's not on here, but iStation is our reading platform that we use as well. And then we have Blueprint for the little babies, for our pre-K babies. And then we also have STEM Scopes, which is our science platform. And then we would also upload pre-recorded lessons from teachers onto their Google Classroom. And then we also have our adopted textbooks. We have the online option for those textbooks that was purchased along with the hard books in the area for reading and math. So all those would be resources that we would upload onto their Google Classroom and that would be available for students to work off of during their asynchronous day of instruction at home. So that would be what Group B would be doing on Monday when Group A is face-to-face. And then again, Group A would do asynchronous learning when Group B is face-to-face. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I did want to just touch quickly on attendance, and because the commissioner was very clear on the, in the spring, they did waive, there were several waivers for different, education codes that are in place, such as the 90% rule. The 90% rule says that students need to be attendance 90% of the time of a school, of a school year to receive credit. And usually when we think of that, we think of the high school students because they receive credit per course. And they waive that, for the spring semester. There were other waivers that of course were brought to you guys because we qualified for some of those things. However, coming this school year, the commissioner was very clear about the 90% rule. That's still in effect. The attendance, we have to take attendance daily, where in the spring semester, like Nina mentioned, that they were going to do some type of comparison, for attendance. TA was calculating that attendance. Moving forward, we will have to take attendance as a school district. We have to account for those kids. So when the students are face-to-face, well, that's easy. You count your kids that are there. You know who's there, who's not. It's your regular attendance type of accounting, like we usually do in a regular normal day, because the students show up. Those that don't show up and are supposed to be there, well, they're counted absent, right? It's the asynchronous model that it's a little more involved in terms of attendance, because we still have to take attendance for the students that are at home, that are doing the asynchronous learning at home. And what that looks like, TEA gave us a little bit of guidance in this past, last Tuesday. The commissioner said we need to, assess the learning management systems to see if students are logging in, how they engaged. That's one way of accounting for attendance. Number two, are they, teachers can make contact to the students on the phone, and that way they can make some contact and you log that. That's another way of taking attendance. And then the other way of taking attendance is looking at their assignments, them turning in assignments, and of course, based on whatever rubric in our grading guidelines, are they making progress? The other big message that was clear was our grading guidelines, where in the spring they were a little flexible. Some districts went pass-fail with their grading guidelines. We opted not to do that, but some districts did. Moving forward to the upcoming school year, our grading guidelines, whether we're doing face-to-face or asynchronous instruction, have to be very, they have to align to what our current grading guidelines are. So that tells me that, we've got to follow what, there's more accountability in what we're going to do this upcoming school year in terms of whether we're doing an asynchronous model or a face-to-face model or a synchronous model. Again, if students are not, let's say, group B is at home on Monday and they did, a student did not log on at all to any of the platforms, we haven't made contact with the student, or they didn't turn any lessons in for us to review that same day, then the student is counted absent. And I think that's huge. That's totally different from the spring. That's going to be a huge message for us as educators, for the teachers, as well as for the community to know if your student does not log on when he's home, then that's an absence. And that counts towards, them. If they don't meet that 90% rule, then they don't receive credit for the course. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Lorena, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they have a time frame that they have to be logged on? Like the ones that go to school, obviously they have a set hours.
Right.
But what about the ones doing it at home?
So one of the things that was mentioned in the commissioner's call was that we were required to take attendance daily.
Okay.
We can set a designated time for teachers because, and here's the other thing. I hear you discussing, the other agenda items on the agenda, and everything's so valid. But I'm going to tell you, things are changing for everybody, and they're changing rapidly. The teacher that has the teacher on Monday that has those 12 students in front of the teacher can take attendance because she's seeing the students, but they're also responsible for checking attendance for the other 12 that are at home.
Okay.
So it's not like I'm only responsible for this 12 and I'm only teaching this 12. The other 12 at home, there has to be an accounting for attendance. And when you think of who takes attendance in the classroom, the teacher does. So somewhere in the schedule of the teacher's schedule, when they have their face-to-face classroom, somewhere in the teacher's schedule, we've got to make sure that there's some type of allowance for the teacher to go check who has signed on to the distance learning, to the learning management systems, and that there's, that they have some, and I know that their day ends at 3:40, the students leave at 3:10, and the day ends at 3:40, where we can still call students that haven't logged on to get the attendance. But if we designate a time, even for the asynchronous students, let's say it's going to be 10 o'clock, like with everybody else, because that's our normal time that we check attendance, and teachers have a minute to check their attendance at 10 o'clock, and they see that there's 5 or 6 students that haven't logged on to the learning management system, that we can send that list of names to the front office so somebody can start calling and letting the parent know, hey, your student hasn't logged on. Because the flexibility that we have with the asynchronous instruction is we check attendance at a certain point, but we can also revise the attendance at the end of the day. However, attendance has to be taken daily. So in other words, I can't take attendance for Monday on Tuesday. Attendance for Monday has to be taken on Monday. Does that make sense?
It sure does. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then, of course, if if you look at the AB schedule Friday.
No. Excuse me, I have a question. With regards, I know that we're talking about having students in class. Let's say a class should be a class of 24.
Yes,
12 are going to be Monday, Wednesday, but let's say that those kids are taking that same course on a Monday, Wednesday. Why can't they log in to the teacher in class at home?
Okay, so you're talking about, okay, so I'm a teacher with my 12 students in front of me that I'm teaching and then the other 12 that are at home, could they have the opportunity to log on while I'm teaching the ones that are in front of me?
Right, exactly.
Okay. Yes, that model is called the synchronous instructional model, okay? That means that's real time, real live instruction with the teacher.
Right.
That is definitely also an option, Ms. Roldan, and we really need to plan for all these different ways of teaching. The caveat with the synchronous instruction that the commissioner has shared with us is that in order for us to follow a synchronous model, like the one you're talking about, students would need to be logged on for a duration of 180 minutes straight, 180 minutes to be able to receive attendance. For, I believe that is for pre-K through 5th grade, and then for secondary students, it's 240 minutes of actual real life interaction with a teacher so that we can receive that funding, that the ADA funding to be counted present. Sometimes what happens when we, with some of the downfall, some of the cons for with a synchronous model that they would have real time is that some students may log off before the 240 minutes are up. Some students, may not stay the whole time. And so those were some of the things that we talked about. Definitely that option can be offered to the students and to the families, but we would still want to pursue the asynchronous model because the asynchronous model has a little more of a leeway in terms of documenting attendance. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. But if you instruct the student that they're to log in at a certain time and log out whenever it's time to log in, give them a number like we do. Like when we take our class at our conference, we have to stay for the duration, and then they give us a code at the end. That way, that you have to stay in class until you get the code. And
right.
And if you get the code, you log into your code, and because you're logged in, and you're getting a code at the end to say, I attended this class this whole time. And that's just an idea. I'm just asking,
Absolutely. And we've talked about that idea, because that doesn't mean that we wouldn't offer that particular model to the students. The only thing that we definitely, I mean, if I was a parent and the teacher said from 8 to 10 o'clock, I'm going to teach reading, they can log on and hear the teacher teach reading. That's amazing. And that's off of me. I hear what Ms. Garza Flores says. I dealt with 8 teachers, and some parents that said, I don't know how to do that. So
exactly.
And so if I had that opportunity, definitely I would get my kids to log in. Unfortunately, sometimes that parents work. Some students may not get up early enough to get on the synchronous model, but definitely that is an opportunity that we can offer for students, but we would still also pursue the asynchronous model because in case they don't get online with the teacher, they can still do the self-paced model and we would still get credit for the attendance.
Yeah, well, just both options would be great so that the students would have that opportunity to be in class.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's three options that we're looking at, and again, high school courses are going to be a lot different than junior high, and junior high a lot different than elementary. So that's why this is just a framework. But the 3 models are the face-to-face, the synchronous, which is it's live instruction happening via device, as well as the asynchronous, which again is going to be a little bit more self-paced. But remember, that's also carryover from other classes that they may be taking. So we're looking at these 3 options, and the great thing is our principals have been amazing. Basically, we gave them a task, and they've been working to put it together what makes sense, how we could have some alignment across the board. So I feel confident now that we have this particular model to start working out the kinks. Because if you notice, Friday doesn't have a lot of information. That's our next big task, is to figure out what the Friday is going to look like as well. Now, just to be clear, there may be some children that are higher special needs children that may have to go from Monday through Friday, depending on their specific need. But for the students in other types of classrooms, the A and B is going to work out the best. And I don't think I said it earlier, trustees, but to help out our families, we're going to try to keep all the families. So if I have all my children and I'm letter M, then I'm going to go, all the M's are going to go on the same day. It's almost like this. It's not going to be perfect, but almost like this. A through L's will go on Monday. M through Z's will go on a Tuesday. A through L's on a Wednesday. M through Z's on a Thursday. So what that'll help us at least to know, as a parent, I don't have my kids all on different days. Most of them it's going to work out to where they'll go to school on the same days as a family.
That's a good
also
idea.
hopefully help our families with their work schedules and such, so they can plan
Dr.
better.
Moreno, with the synchronous method, wouldn't they need cameras in the classroom for the teacher? Like a camera that kind of projects them?
The great thing is because we're going Google across the board, and the Miss Rachel, I think her last name's Medrano. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're
She's
right.
a new technology instructional specialist. She's gonna definitely be able to guide our teachers, but you can have that operation off of a device like you're using right now.
Oh,
To
I
be able to
see.
be live for our kids as well.
Okay.
So that's why it's so important that we all have basically the same type of system. And when you're using the Google Classroom, there's a lot of versatility in what the capability is.
Oh, so true. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the one question, trustees, I'm sure that you've been asked or going to be asked is for that parent that says, well, you know, what if I can't, I'm fearful. I just don't want to send my child right now to school. I want to wait a little bit. Does a parent have that option? Yes. As long as the child is enrolled within Robstown ISD, is counted for Robstown ISD, then the child can also receive basically what's considered asynchronous, basically remote instruction. But the child is still accountable day to day with the family, of course, for attendance. We have to see student progress. They have to see that they're getting the work done completely, because there's still requirements from the state of Texas that a child must be, it's a law, be receiving an education, right? They must be in school on a day-to-day basis. It may look different from them. Now, the only thing is we can't do is say, oh, okay, I'll send them this day, but I'm not going to. I want to keep them this week. And now I want to wait 2 weeks and then send them back. That we have to put some parameters on, because if not, we're never going to be able to get ahead with that one particular child. So there may be a certain timeline that we'll establish, let's say 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then you can choose to come back. It's gonna be some flexibility, but at the same time we have to have some set standards as well. But to be clear, because you're going to be asked that question, if I don't feel comfortable, can I keep my child home and teach them from home? But if they're a Robstown ISD child, they have to be registered, and then we'll provide the support that they need. Okay, they just can't keep them at home, not register them, because then they're breaking the law at that point.
Okay, Dr. Moreno, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Some parents are talking about doing homeschooling, and when you homeschool, you have to kind of belong to some kind of a co-op. And can we offer that to the parent as a co-op, being the Robstown ISD?
I'm glad you brought up that question, because this will also help out all trustees. Homeschool a child is different. That means you're not part of Robstown ISD. You're choosing whatever state curriculum or whatever state program is out there, and you're existing under their umbrella. What we're saying is, if you're within our umbrella and right now you choose to keep your child at home, you must follow the parameters that we establish. That way that child is being accountable day to day by attendance as well as by their academics. So, and that you're going to hear that word a lot, but what we're not using is homeschooling, because homeschooling is something different. We're using remote learning. Remote learning is distance learning, okay? But the key word that you'll want to listen to for is remote learning.
Okay. Okay, because I know that some parents are thinking about homeschooling their kids. Homeschool, that's the word they're using.
Right.
And so that means that they're not registering them at Robstown ISD.
Correct.
So we won't get that credit for that child, correct?
Correct.
They'd have to do their own learning, whatever.
So as we start to communicate out more right after the break, now that we have a more solid plan, and as well as all of our colleagues in other districts, we're kind of around the same window of time, then that's where we start to clarify what that language is. Homeschool is something different. We will provide the opportunity for remote learning. And let's say they choose to keep their child at home for a month, and that's something where we're still accountable to provide them an education through remote instruction. But they're counted for attendance, and they're counting for the instructional part as far as the grading and the state expectations.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. So any other
Thank you,
questions from
Mr. Go ahead.
me? Any other questions from me?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very good job.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're gonna go to, that was an action item, sir?
No, so that's just
Oh,
a
we're-
presentation.
All right, the other one would be the discuss and consider approval of the 2020-2021 student dress code.
Yeah, yes, trustees, that's something that we need to be able to approve, at some point, but because that's something we have to provide into our handbooks as well for our kids. But it also gives our parents an opportunity to plan ahead, knowing what the expectations are. So this is the same exact dress code from last year. Obviously, we didn't have our kids from March up until now. So we do in the future want to be able to poll our kids and get some ideas and things like that, have that discussion. But at this point, I'm recommending that we just continue following the same dress code that we had last year, since we're already, again, in midsummer, about to start school in another month or now.
Here goes
Okay.
that 2-hour conversation about torn jeans.
No, my deal was the facial hair. It's getting to the point where they're wearing a beard, not well groomed. And I saw that a lot, even at graduation, there was students that had long beards. So I don't know, that might be up for discussion. I don't know what y'all think.
I'm just happy for them to be in class. I mean, that's my main concern is them getting their education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I too, Hector.
I
But,
know
and
that.
And I know we don't have to be so rigid with this COVID right now. I just threw that out there. That's why I said that.
Okay. And recommendation, sir?
My recommendation, trustees, is to consider approval of the 2020-2021 student dress code, again, which is the same as last year's dress code.
There's recommendation from staff that we approve the 2020-2021 student dress code, same as it was last year. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Orona. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Unanimous? We go to item number 7. We're going to closed session under section 551.074. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Orona, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Lopez. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous? It is now 7:08 and we'll go into executive session, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
And trustees, we're getting better at this. This worked out a lot. Work out some more kinks, but this is working little by little.
I like it. I like it.
We'll get our own practice and getting that better, stronger.
Yeah.
So again, just general information. We'll starting tomorrow. Our district is closed until the 13th.
All right. So we have that action item on A. We had a motion and a second, right?
Where
To
are we
approve
on
the
record?
resolution.
We're on open session.
Irma, are you on record? Irma, are you open already? We're open already. Can you so you can take note? Okay.
Is she there or is she?
She's in her office,
No,
but I don't see her icon there.
Oh, there she goes.
Oh, there she goes. Okay. We are open, Richard?
He's got her
Okay.
in the
All right,
lobby.
we're on.
All right,
There.
Okay.
okay. So the action items are your recommendation?
Trustees, to consider approval of resignations, appointments, and terminations as discussed in closed session.
Recommendation from staff that we approve resignations, appointment, and termination as discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion?
Come
Moved by Ms. Orona. Is there a second? Is there a second? Second by Ms. Garza. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous. We go to B, sir.
Trustees, we ask you to consider approval of Principal Rachel Neff for Robert Driscoll Elementary School.
There's recommendation from staff that we approve Rachel Knapp as the principal for Robert Driscoll Elementary School. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Orona. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion?
So
Moved by
moved.
Mr. Lopez. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Orona. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous. Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Great job,
Very good.
trustees. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job. Enjoy your
Bye,
vacations, everybody.
You all
Thank
be
you. Call me if
safe.
you need anything.
All
Stay
right.
safe.
July what you said the next meeting, the 20th?
20th, yes.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
When
Thank
is,
you, everybody.
what is July 20th?
That'll be our
next
next
meeting?
board meeting because we can't have it on the 13th.